I'm going to ask him, okay? I'm going to ask him. Don't ask him. I swear to God, if you turn around, I'm going to be so embarrassed. And Gordon, people think it's creepy. If you tell them it's a kid's product and you're giving it to them and you want them to take it right there, they don't know who you are. You know, it's hard. It's embarrassing.
Are you ready? All right, let's go.
Manufacturing is sexy. Sounds crazy? Just wait. I'm Z Holly, host of The Art of Manufacturing. Your behind-the-scenes look at how people who make stuff are trying to make it in their industries. If you've ever wondered how to build a brand, a business, or just a better mousetrap, tune in and enjoy. Summer should be slow season, but this has been an exciting week for me. Make in LA just last night unveiled the 16 founders and CEOs we selected as our Catalyst Fellows. These entrepreneurs will get hands-on help scaling their production locally, and we believe they're poised to help bring manufacturing back to LA. If you want to learn more, check out the website, makeitinla.org. And I thought this week would be a great time to go back into the vault and pick one of my favorite episodes to replay. A year ago, when I spoke with Courtney Nichols Gould, the co-founder and CEO of SmartyPants Vitamins, I was really curious how they could be so successful launching their products in a time when Amazon seemed to be eating the world. Well, this episode is as relevant as ever. Since it first dropped, Amazon acquired Whole Foods. 9 massive retailers disappeared in the Great Retail Meltdown of 2017, and they now have a foothold in every corner of your home too, with Echo Dot and Ring. There's no doubt Amazon is a bigger force than ever to be reckoned with. Earlier this year, I wrote a Forbes column that the biggest tech trend of the year wasn't going to be a technology per se, but it was Amazon as a company. They'll have a vast impact on so many other aspects of how we live and how we work and collaborate, and even how our cities might be designed in the future. This goes beyond their more obvious impacts in the retail industry. Just the new expectation of on-demand has transformed business models across the board. With their 100,000-plus industrial robots, they have to pioneer new leadership approaches in an environment where humans must collaborate with robots. The purpose of shopping malls is getting totally reimagined. And in an age of on-demand delivery, warehouses are playing a more integral role in our cities. Just look at how dozens of cities scrambled to curry favor with Amazon to entice them to locate their second headquarters in their city. Yet I wondered when on-demand delivery might turn to custom on-demand local manufacturing. But I digress. Back to Courtney. She and her partner, Gordon Gould, each had really successful careers in the tech industry before launching a consumer packaged goods company. They have negotiated the minefields of today's landscape masterfully. And in this episode, we talk about her path from tech entrepreneur to a maker of things, which isn't always so easy. And we hear tons of tips and war stories about introducing new products in this crazy world of rapidly changing retail. She's mission-driven, but doesn't flaunt it, and at one point, she goes deep about her awkward early years before she finally discovered her identity as a successful CEO. And we broach the touchy subject of starting a business and then falling in love with your co-founder. We hear about that and a whole lot more on this week's episode of The Art of Manufacturing.
We got into the business, frankly, because we couldn't find a solution that we were happy with, which was vitamins that address these gaps in the diet that we had, that was affordable, that was a good experience, meaning like it tasted good or it was easy to do because it wasn't 15 different pills, and was affordable for a whole family, and from a company we trusted. It was like you could get some of those things. There were really good high-end vitamin companies for sure, but that meant spending a lot of money and or some complicated regimen that we just weren't going to stick with for more than 2 weeks. And so that was really kind of that's the headline, which is there was this persistent problem that we just made it too hard on ourselves to address what are very likely persistent gaps in our diet.
So how is what SmartyPants is doing unique then?
So, my brother, who is our head of brand, actually, came up with a great phrase, which I loved, called the democratization of premium. And I love that. That's really what's different about us, which is we're not focused on making premium vitamins for the 1% or the 5%. Our goal is to make something that we know really is high quality, that's not out there currently, in a format people will stick with, for everybody. And that's why we didn't just focus on, we are sold in Whole Foods, but that's why we really wanted to make something that we know would be at a price point that it would be sold at Target, which it is, and at Walmart and all these places at a price point that is really competitive, what's already on shelf, but has better ingredients.
Is that purely a pricing decision, or are there some manufacturing innovations that are letting you do this?
So the thing that we did differently in the manufacturing side and the design was this all-in-one approach. So instead of having single nutrients, which is what you see commonly out in the marketplace, so a vitamin A is one thing, a vitamin D is another, vitamin E, we focused on a comprehensive that gets rid of a lot of the waste and a lot of the fillers and a lot of the extra, which allows us then to use these more premium nutrients, right? And so by making what we call an all-in-one, it allows us to make it more affordable to use the more premium form of nutrients. So to use methylfolate instead of folic acid, or some of these things that we know are more bioavailable.
Why don't other vitamins manufacturers do that?
Well, you'll have to ask them, but it's expensive. I mean, the reality is it's expensive. And so we also made a choice not to have an 80% margin. We have very good margins, but we did make a choice, to have a product that we knew people were going to buy again and again. And so we don't have to pay to acquire that customer a second time, right? And it makes those products extremely efficient on shelf. Our productivity in consumer package land, our productivity per linear square foot is very, very, very high. And thanks to, selling on Amazon, we know for a fact that our retention rate is 2 to 3 times our competitors, all of our competitors.
Wow. So we're definitely going to get back to that, the whole relationship with the customer and that process.
Right.
But I want to take a step back because you mentioned Gordon.
Yes.
And I want to hear about how you met and that whole, I mean, it's not really often that a couple is actually running a business.
Probably for good reason. It's not easy. Gordon, we knew each other actually from the internet business a long time ago. And we reconnected when I came to LA. And he was already had several ideas in his head that he was thinking about. And one of them had to do with nutrition. And then we got into this, real conversation around how to make it easier and address the gaps and all those things. And, it really happened that we started working on the business and then fell in love. And it's not convenient. And, we had a lot of conversations about it. Because to your investors, to our core investors, that's a very real conversation. And I think, it was either going to go really, really well or it was going to go really, really badly. And it is a lot to fall in love and have a blended family and start a business all at the same time. And it took a lot of very conscious communication. And we had a coach who was one of our co-founders.
Fascinating.
Seriously made all the difference. We would not have made it through without Breck. Just because it's too much. You don't want to fail in front of the person that you're in love with. You want to be amazing all the time, but your partner's building this business, so feedback is constant. So he's working on building the business on Amazon. I'm giving feedback about the copy on the page. And that can feel to him like I'm criticizing him. There's a lot of stuff to work out. But, I have to tell you that I think Gordon feels the same way. It has ended up being truly a competitive advantage, and it is at the core of our company. And my brother is our head of brand. And we didn't plan that. And I begged Clay for a year to come help us because I knew how good he was at this stuff. And now he's been with us for 3 years. And I don't know, there's something very moving to me and motivating to me that my family literally is involved in the business and that our kids hand wrote the little thank you notes when it sounds so cliche, but it's really true. This thing started literally in our house, and Kylan would handwrite every note because we're, of course, shipping every individual bottle, out the door ourselves. And anyway.
How long ago was that you were doing that?
Oh my gosh, that was like 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, you come a long ways. So what are your sales like now?
So we're quite large. So last year we did about 25 million in revenue. And, I think we've got a very good sense that we will continue to have triple digit growth, over the next few years, and that we will be in triple digit millions in the near future, and which is shocking. And frankly, Gordon and I still look at each other and go, wow, that is a lot of gummies. I can't believe. But
so tell me a little bit more about the product itself. So you're saying gummies.
Okay,
what do you mean by gummies?
So it's we make these all-in-one gummy vitamins. So the idea was that we would put it in a format that really tasted good. that would drive compliance, because we knew that's really the secret sauce, is that people don't just take it once, they take it again and again. And so that's gummy. And you see that now. It's become quite a significant thing in the vitamin aisle. A lot of people are starting to use gummies.
Did that add any challenge to you?
The format, you mean?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, certainly the whole thing was a challenge, because Gordon and I have both built businesses, but we've never made a thing before,
Yes.
right? So we've never made a thing. We weren't in the vitamin business. We didn't know anything. I mean, the list of things we didn't know was way longer than the things that we did know. However, that one thing was a big one, right? We had a core feeling and an instinct and an experience in our own lives and our friends' lives that this is a real problem. So of course there was a lot, because, finding a manufacturing partner when you're new to the field. And fortunately we had another co-founder who was a preventative healthcare guy and really well known here in LA. So he had some, ideas. Obviously he's creating the formula.
Dr. Drew?
Yes, Dr. Drew.
Okay.
So we had a lot of brilliance, in terms of the design, but we still had to go find a manufacturing partner, and we had to find a nonprofit partner, because I wanted that to be a part of the business when we started, was this 1-for-1 match. And that was pretty hysterical, because, I just walk into this little tiny office in Santa Barbara. At the time, this nonprofit Vitamin Angels was quite small, and now they're the biggest player in this area. But, I walked in and said, hi, I'm going to change the world of vitamins. I'm going to, and he just looked at me like I was nuts. And he was like, sure you are. But
tell us about your background. You have a great tech career. Also, Gordon has a great tech career. What did you learn from that process that helped you?
Right. I was in politics originally. I worked for Governor Richards. It was my very first job, the former governor of Texas, who was an extraordinary woman. And that taught me a lot about compromise, frankly, and also that I didn't want to be in politics. and then, I've had a couple kind of key moments in the arc that I think led me to today. The next was, I got a job actually working for GM, for their board of directors in New York. And it was this amazing opportunity. They had this kind of glorified intern, but what was cool about it is you saw every part of the business. You worked out of the treasurer's office in New York. And if you did it for 2 years, they would give you a full ride to HBS. But the promise was you would then come back and work for them, right? And so I did the 2 years. And to the great heartbreak of my parents, the internet business was just starting in New York. And so instead of leaving and going to Harvard Business School, I left to go do this crazy startup when startups were just starting to be a thing in New York, right? And like we're in this tiny little office on Broadway, and we're sleeping in bunk beds at the office because we're working 18 hours a day. Literally, it was ridiculous.
And they talk about like ethics abuses, human rights abuses
but we were
in China.
Doing it to ourselves, so it wasn't so bad. Literally, Cy Newhouse was our like lead investor, and he had this thing about meeting at 6 a.m. in the morning, and so we would be at the office creating stuff at 3 in the morning. It was crazy, but I did that and got into the internet business and really loved all the creation and building. But ultimately, it was all around ad sales, and there was something about that just started to feel, I just didn't feel connected to it. It wasn't bad, but I didn't feel any emotional connection to it or drive. And I've always had an enormous amount of drive, but didn't quite know where to point it. And I also think, frankly, I liked being the person behind the person. I was always the person behind the CEO, the COO, or I was the head of sales behind the CEO. But it was a really interesting transformation for me, one, to realize, in fact, and people had said this to me, like, you should be doing this yourself. You clearly love it. Stop hiding. And then the last piece of that transformation for me really was the last job I had before this, which was building a company called Clear with Steve Brill, whose idea it was, which was this first fast pass for airport security, which was a brilliant idea and was an amazing endeavor, and it had insane hurdles, the TSA and the Department of Homeland Security and airports and airport authorities and airlines and all these people kind of aligned and organizations aligned against us. And it was an extraordinary thing to make happen. But what really changed everything for me was that I got to experience someone writing me an email saying, oh my gosh, this changed my life because I'm a frequent flyer and I used to have to leave my kids, 2 hours early in the morning. And now I get to stay with them and get to the airport 30 minutes before the way it used to be. And that hooked me. That idea that I could be a part of making something that directly impacted someone's life and they could tell me about it was like, it still gives me goosebumps. It's so dorky, but like, that's just, there's something very, I think actually very ancient and very real about making something and having an exchange with another person that you gave them that thing and that they can share back with you what that meant to them. So I was done. And I didn't know. It certainly wasn't like I had this master plan of launching an anti-terrorism technology in airports and then making gummy vitamins. That was not that was not in anyone's plan, I'm sure. But it ended up being the exact right thing, and I'm so grateful for those experiences because they certainly made me a much better CEO for sure.
So back to vitamins.
Yeah.
So what's challenging about making vitamins? Because that's a huge change. You're going from tech to making things, but on top of it, presumably there's regulations, or are there?
And that's kind of one of the big myths, right? That it's not regulated. It is regulated, but it's not regulated the way drugs are regulated. So there are absolutely explicit laws about things you can say, what you can put on your label. You have to test your vitamins when you make them. They do have to have in them what you say they have in them. Now, that doesn't mean everyone does that, but that is the law. What's challenging about it is what you just said, and this was something I did experience with Clear as well. Operating in these more intense environments, meaning there's regulatory and in vitamins too, people think, oh, well, you don't make a claim. I don't make any claims on my product. I just say what it is. But you're still making a claim because you're making something called a vitamin. If it's a supplement, there is, I think, in people's minds, a sense that it is something for their health. And I do think it does require a sense of humility when you're getting into that business. Those screw ups are not small. We've seen it happen with people who've rushed into the market and had caused, some health issues and have had recalls. And I don't mean recalls like something's mislabeled or, mistakes happen, but recalls where the product has a problem. And you have to take that stuff seriously. You're not making shoes, it's a very real thing. And so that obligation weighs appropriately on me and us and the whole team just because it's a product that you're making. And we started with kids, which is an even higher hurdle, right?
Yeah.
You're building trust with parents. You've got, and look, our kids take them.
It's interesting because I'm thinking that you are a real pioneer in some sense of what you created, and then you have a lot of competition now, which is growing, right? And I would think that there's some pros and cons of having competition.
Yeah, I try to remind myself that it's flattering.
Well, so tell us a little bit, like, who's your biggest competition, and what's the biggest risks that you see from that competition?
So it's interesting because the way we approach the market, no one's doing exactly what we're doing, in terms of combining premium, all-in-one. We've come at the market in a very specific way, which is why I think we've been so successful. Most of the competitors that we have are either, we think of them as competitors on the premium side, and they might not even think of us as competitors. So, I like Thorne and Metagenics and all these sort of high designs for health products that you might not even see sold on shelf, that typically through doctors' offices, because they're the ones that focus on the premium forms of nutrients for bioavailability because doctors feel good recommending them. I look at them as competition. Then there are gummies that people see as competition, which are mainstream companies, Vitafusion and Nature Made and Ollie, and there are lots of brands. And a lot of them are kind of doing the same thing. Some of them, I think, more effectively from a branding standpoint, right? Ollie is, I think, doing a much better job in branding their products, let's say over Vitafusion, which is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in our space. They sell more gummies than anybody. But they're all kind of doing the same thing, which is focusing on these single nutrients because there's growth there. But still, the vast majority of people are really taking multivitamins. And they're taking omegas and vitamin D, and we're combining all those things into one serving. And then depending on the product, like with the women's, we also add CoQ10 and we use K2 from MQ7, which are all these premium nutrients that more and more doctors are recommending, but aren't included in those products because they want them to be inexpensive. And so we really walk that line. And so if you walk into Target or any of the stores, what you'll see is typically we're on literally the top shelf because that's where the brand is in terms of the quality and pricing and all of that. We're considered a top shelf brand, and we're in between the world of pills and gummy because our whole point was to try to bring that reputation of premium to gummy. Again, this idea of democratization of premium, and I think it's a smart place for people to look for opportunity. Walmart brought organics into being in a real way and made them affordable, and they are going to do that across every category. Everyone deserves premium, quote unquote, things, food and clean water and good nutrients, and that shouldn't just be the provenance of people who can afford to shop at Whole Foods.
So how do you bring that about? And let's say if I were an entrepreneur that wanted to do the same thing in my category, what are the challenges in doing that? And what were the challenges when you were doing that?
Well, I think one of the challenges is money, which is the challenge for an entrepreneur, period. But if you're doing something premium, it's more expensive. And because when you start, you get these terrible terms from your manufacturing partners, right? Because they want you to pay them up front because they don't believe you're going to make it. And because most of the businesses fail and all the things that make it hard, it makes it harder if you're doing premium. So I think that's the one thing to know. But if you can focus on make a small amount of a premium thing and simply demonstrate that approach to the market will drive repeat purchase, depending on what kind of product it is, then I think you can go out and raise the money if you need to, or continue to finance knowing that you're onto something. So the only thing I would say with premium is just caution your approach and try to get a sense that there really is a very real problem you're solving before you go out and make a lot of it, because it's expensive. Gordon and I didn't take a salary for 5 years. We used all of our savings to get this business off the ground. And, for the first year, we didn't raise any money. We really had to do it all ourselves because the only people we knew were in tech. Back then, now everyone invests in health and wellness, but when we were starting SmartyPants, most of those tech investors, those funds did not talk about stuff like that. They didn't look at that stuff.
So that's really changed. The conversation has really changed.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
Yeah. So how have you seen that change, and how does that impact you and other entrepreneurs?
I mean, it's positive in the way you mean in the shift towards health and wellness and the interest of it's positive in that one. I think obviously that's an important area as healthcare costs grow, which they inevitably will, no matter which policy the government pursues, because our whole population is aging. This is going to become an increasing problem. And I think people feel the need to arm themselves. And I feel the shift towards preventative health is frankly a necessity. I learned something interesting when we started this business, that vitamins are a recession-proof business. When the economy goes down, vitamins go up because people can't afford to get sick.
So, and they probably can't afford good food either.
Right,
sadly,
which is heartbreaking. So anyway, so the idea is that I think the shift is important because the culture is going there, and that's a good thing because we all want to take better care of ourselves, obviously, before we get sick. People getting into it is great. The danger is that, again, it's not shoes. And, Gordon and I talk about it feels like the internet in the late 90s when it went crazy and the bubble. It feels like that in health and wellness. Everyone's rushing in, but you're not rushing into the building of apps. You're rushing into a field that is impacting people's bodies and minds, and you gotta take that seriously. I really just want to caution people that make sure. So we have an outside advisory board. You want to make sure you are getting the advice of people who have spent their lives not reading some blogs online, but literally have professional training and understanding how the body works, how the mind works, and really understanding the research. Because I think that's one of the dangers is we all, and I'm a victim of it too, but we all live in this place in LA and particularly in Venice where it is like health mecca. Everyone's working out.
Don't even get me started.
I know. And it's absurd. Obviously, it gets to the absurd. And I think it's really important to know that we are not experts. I am not an expert. I am not a physician. I am not a trained researcher. Now, I've been doing this for 6 years and have a lot of very smart people, and I've read a lot. But I still always go to them before we make any decision about our product.
Now, that's all fine and good, where you may be doing everything right to make sure your product is healthy and serving its purpose. But then I would think that the competition, or at least this trend, if it's filled with a bunch of pseudoscience, it can really hurt you as a company. How do you communicate with your customers to make sure that they understand that you actually are distinguished from these other companies that may not be serving the customer?
What we really focus on is just trying to be very communicate a lot about what we do and why we do it, and lead by example. So we make choices in these specific ingredients, and then we talk about it. We'll put a neck tag on every bottle that says, now, no folic acid. We only use methylfolate in all of our products, and we're the first company to do that in gummy. And we just educate people. And then people say, oh, well, what is the difference between folate and folic acid? And they look it up, and then they learn more. And that to us is a positive thing. And if we can drag the industry with us, if they see that drive sales, then that's great. Then we've gotten the whole industry to sort of change that ingredient, which is a win.
And you've
everybody.
Seen that?
We have seen that.
Really?
Where we started using a form of B12 that we preferred and that our scientific advisory board felt stronger about. And we have now started to see other companies switch. And some of those companies we had met with had come to us about private label. And we said, we don't private label, but we'd partner. And here's something I would really suggest that you look at. And now I've started to see those companies switch that form. And I love that. that, because then I'm not just affecting my customers, I'm affecting their customers, but we still win, even if the competition switches, because the retailers see that we're the ones that do it first, and then those folks come after, and that's great. And they're doing, again, there's no one doing exactly what we do. So even though they're competition, in a way, they're not direct competitors, right? Because we have really approached it as a niche, which is always a nice way to do it.
You're listening to The Art of Manufacturing. Follow our adventures on Instagram and Twitter @ArtofMFG. And to chat with other like-minded creators, join the Art of Manufacturing Facebook group. We'll be right back after this break. I want to give a shout out to DLA Piper, a global law firm with lawyers throughout the U.S. and across the globe, and clients ranging from emerging companies to multinational enterprises. I'm a fan of DLA Piper because their team has been really generous in supporting the art of manufacturing, and the Make It in LA initiative is a founding partner. And they've always had someone on their team who's knowledgeable about whatever off-the-wall issue I throw their way. For more information, visit makeitinla.org/DLA Piper. We're speaking with Courtney Nichols Gould, the co-founder and CEO of SmartyPants Vitamins. She's sharing her advice for launching and growing a successful consumer products company. I'd like to talk more about the customer too, because I think that you've had a unique relationship with your customer, with it built on trust. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you built that base of customers, because you haven't been around that long.
No, and huge credit to Gordon, really, because he came with all of the focus and expertise in online. And one of the things I think that we did right was starting on Amazon. Now, Amazon now is even still so challenging to work with. Mm-hmm. Everyone who sells something on Amazon knows that. But there is one distinct advantage, and why I still recommend it to a lot of entrepreneurs. I know there's a lot of noise around direct to consumer, right? Mm-hmm. It feels like the future of the business.
We actually had an episode with Jessie Janae where we talked a little bit about how she empowers direct to consumer,
which is awesome,
companies with packaging, and
that's
because
great.
These companies have a direct relationship with a customer.
Business, actually, I saw it. Yeah. But the reality of direct to consumer is it can be very easy to get to 5 million in sales, and it can be extremely challenging to get beyond that. Now, that doesn't mean that should be the point of every business to grow. But if you think you've got something that you really think could be widely scalable, it becomes very, very expensive to do that without retail. And in our world, we studied this very closely. And the reality is 90% of the sales that happen in my category still happen in a retail environment. Now, more of it's shifting. And so we started on Amazon because we knew that was a cost-effective way without raising a ton of money. We could go, quote unquote, on shelf. So we could be on Amazon and, most importantly, build reviews. And what I think was so genius about what Gordon did is that because the product was really high quality, we built a very strong review base. And what we now see is that Amazon is the number one product search engine. They don't use Google, they use Amazon. You're going into a store or you want to buy something, you go onto Amazon to see how it's rated. And so people are and what's great is now I think the other retailers are not as afraid of Amazon in that way. They realize that the Amazon reviews are actually driving sales for their products at Target, right? And so that has been a huge boon to us, and was a very smart way to launch the business. Now, there are challenges that come with it as well, obviously, and you have to care about those reviews. And if you launch on Amazon and build reviews, make sure you're paying attention to them. We spend a lot of time and manpower vigilantly watching all of our reviews, meaning if someone has a comment that's a negative review, and by the way, getting negative reviews can be a very positive thing. Most people are deeply suspicious of products that have all 5 stars. 4-star products sell. I mean, Amazon people will tell you this, at a higher rate because people know that there's some negative. And I think the best opportunities, frankly, are the negative reviews where you engage with people and you're able to have a conversation. And I can't tell you how many sample requests we still get from a review we responded to 5 years ago.
Wow.
It's just crazy. So people love that you care and that you're not hiding behind something, and also that you admit your humanity even as a company. We will make mistakes. We will, and we will be accountable for them, and we will try to be, vigilant in correcting them. I think the online environment is very positive, but retail is still king. And so that direct to consumer it's a tricky path. I think there are lots of things that are very appealing about it. And certainly a lot of the investment community is very focused on businesses built D2C because you own the data, and everyone's seen the $1 Million Shave Club story and they're $1 billion. And but there's a lot that goes with that.
Sounds like it's a whole spectrum. So you have the direct-to-consumer on one end, and then you have sort of Amazon in the middle, and then you have the retail, which is
That's right.
harder to get into and manage.
Way more expensive, for sure.
Tell me about how, if you're starting out as an entrepreneur, do you enter in one point and then move in or how would you advise an entrepreneur if there's like, your tips in getting into retail?
So I think the first thing is to figure out where your market is and where it's growing the fastest. So we launched on Amazon because we knew initially that market was growing. So if we could drive rank and if we could have a top ranked product, if that market's growing really quickly, then we would benefit from getting in early and having that ownership. And it would give us the momentum to then go to a brick and mortar retailer with leverage. And that's what's important. So it's not that brick and mortar can't work, but you can't go in. I mean, you can get robbed blind, right? I mean, it is. So this whole myth of, you get it on shelf and that's it. That's like 2% of it. 98% of it is once you're on shelf. That thing's got to turn. You got to have velocity. And so you want to go to retailers with enough leverage that they don't kill you with fees and slotting and, all the things that happen in retail. And online can help you build that reputation. So you can go to a retailer and say, hey, look, here's my velocity. I've demonstrated my ability to build on-shelf demand. Here are the reviews for my product that people will be looking at when they go into a store. So I do think it's a nice way to build the reputation of the company in a way that's relatively affordable, and then go to retail. So I think it's important to really study the numbers to figure out where the most growth is in your category, because it might be direct to consumer. That might be the smartest play. It depends on what category you're in. For us, if it's a convenience purchase that someone's buying every month, it seemed to us highly unlikely. It's just a question of scale. And the intention of our business was clear to us. Our goal was to reach the vast majority of people who were not being served. Mm-hmm. So for us, that made sense. Going into Target and Walmart and those places made sense.
So you launched in what year?
So we launched our very first product, 2011 was really our first full year of business when we launched on Amazon with only one SKU.
So you've just started paying yourselves, basically.
Only in the last year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really got this off the ground.
Yeah.
Without, with limited marketing budget.
Yeah, zero marketing budget. The key was to create, it was to share the product with people. And really, even before we launched on Amazon, or maybe right after we launched on Amazon, we took our first precious 100 bottles and we sent them to 100 people we knew. And we said, what do you think about this? Because we wanted to understand really what people thought about it and what were their questions and concerns. So that was really an important thing. Because one of the things we got right off the bat was, because there was a little bit of the sugars on the outside, it made people think there was more sugar in it than there was. So we learned very early on, we got to communicate about that up front, educate people. So that was really important. Sharing it with the community big enough to really get very honest feedback. And then we knew, this is why we launched on Amazon, getting the reviews and building a group of people, and direct to consumers the same way, a group of people who were really devoted and we knew would talk about the product. Not because we asked them to, but because when people find stuff that they love, particularly if you're solving something that really is a pain point, and kids not eating greens is a very real pain point. So if you're onto something like that, people will really advocate for you. And so for us, it's how do you do that? How do you create something that people... So one is make something really good. Care about the quality. Branding is important, but all the branding in the world will not help you if your thing is not amazing. People really care about that. Make sure that it's something that you have a clear understanding of what the expectation is and your ability to deliver against that expectation. So not just what you think you want to make, but what is the expectation that the end user is carrying around in their head about what that product would be like. Does that make sense? So make sure you got clear, and that's part of sending that product out first. And don't be afraid of getting bad news, because you might get bad news. Better to get it then, than a year later. So, and then take all that information and now know that you're armed with the best presentation possible because you understand how people are going to receive it. Then go out and build a platform that allows you to create reviews, because that's a public way. You got to be ready for negative, that people, not everyone's going to love your stuff, no matter how great it is. So be ready for that. And engage. Just engage. You will be amazed what 20 people who love your product can do. On Amazon, you get to over 100 reviews and you start to get some real traction. 100 reviews. That's not that many. Much. So get out in the world and look at people in the eye and share your product.
So literally, how do you find those first 100 people?
So for us, it was friends. I mean, it's literally people that we knew that were parents. and just said, hey, and if you have 5 friends that you know that are parents, we'd love to send this to them because then we know we'll get really honest feedback because your friends might not be so honest. So he said, we'll give it to you and here's our email address. They don't need to do anything. We're going to send it. But if you send something to someone, typically they will take the time to send you a piece of feedback. Right?
Yeah, what
They will.
percentage of the people wrote back?
I would say it was like 70% of people, 75% of people.
Great.
It was a pretty good number. But again, we started with people we knew, but then asked them to ask 5 people. And you just start with that. And then the other part is Amazon. Admittedly, it's harder now than when Gordon and I started. The ecosystem to get in there and start building reviews is important. And they really want them to be verified purchase, which is really the challenge now. So it used to be you couldn't buy reviews, right? People have to be honest reviews. But you could send product to people and ask them to review it on Amazon. You can't do that anymore. Amazon has said, it is against our terms of service for you to do that. Now, they have a program called Vine, if people are listening that are interested in building on Amazon, where you pay them a fee, and I would say it is very much worth it. And they send it to their reviewers, and you get honest reviews. And again, you got to be ready for negative feedback, but at least that's a way to quickly build a review base. And verified purchase really matters. So I would focus on going out into the real world, literally setting up a stand, go to a farmer's market, find a way, go to a school, and set up a little table. And every person that you meet that tastes it, if they're interested in it, say, hey, I would love a review on Amazon. If you're interested, you can buy it there. And let them go post a review. Because people, if they have a real connection with it and they like it, they will do it. They'll look for it.
That's a good point. If somebody actually goes to buy it, they're going to be liking the product.
Exactly. So it's really, frankly, it's a lot of scut work. It is like out in the world talking to people nonstop. Gordon and I never went anywhere without samples of our products in our bag. I will tell you the most embarrassing thing ever. We went to see the Hubble movie. This is like, I don't know, years ago. Gordon, we're sitting there and there is a family behind us and we must have had a 20-minute conversation like this. I'm going to ask him, okay? I'm going to ask him. Don't ask him. I swear to God, if you turn around, I'm going to be so embarrassed. And Gordon, people think it's creepy. If you tell them it's a kid's product and you're giving it to them and you want them to take it right there, they don't know who you are. We had this whole like whispered, intense conversation about giving the samples to... and eventually did. He turned around and said, hey, we make this product. It's hard. It's embarrassing. It is. Gordon's actually brave. People would think I'm an extrovert and I'm the one. Gordon's way better at approaching people, total random strangers in public. Movie star, like we see someone famous on the he walks up and hands them the samples. We didn't go anywhere without samples in our pockets and every single one of our bags, everywhere we went. So you got to be shameless. Like
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. You were so kind to bring me these vitamins as guests.
Treats.
I'm going to pull them up because
that's
I want to
very nice of
see,
you.
because this is a huge bag.
I know. It weighs a lot.
This is not, I wasn't planning on pulling this out, but I want to know what's in this bag.
I brought you the women's
You said-
complete, the men's
Oh my God.
complete, and then our
gonna
new
be healthy.
probiotic, prebiotic complete
I'm
as
going to
well.
be healthy for a long time. All right, we got
That's blueberry.
blueberry. I do like blueberries.
They're vegan.
Are they locally
Certified vegan.
picked?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they are. We do make them all here. Everything's made in California.
Yes, the aroma.
They're very blueberry.
Would you like one?
Huh? Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I eat my product every day.
So how many should I buy?
It's so funny now that we're launching new products. I have to taste every single lot, both the lots that we're developing, like the samples, but also every finished lot of every single product I taste and rate and give feedback. So you end up eating. Now I'm eating too many in a day.
That's not good.
Because I have, now we've got enough products that I'm having to taste way too many.
Can I take two?
Yeah, take one each. Sorry, get it good.
All right.
Combo. Chewing into the microphone feels so rude.
What's what flavor?
Lemon cream.
They're both good, but I like the blueberry.
I know. We usually end up with a very divided audience.
Awesome. So you're actually just launching something right now.
We are.
Yeah. So I want to hear about that. I'm wondering if we should talk just a little bit more about the retail though first.
Yeah, whatever.
It is such a challenging thing for startups.
I know.
At what point, I want to dig in a little bit more.
Yep.
What's the process and then what are the biggest hurdles? Because I'm sure 2011 you get on Amazon, woo, we're selling product. Yeah, you're home free, right?
Right. So I think the biggest challenge is one, there are so many things that you don't know about the ecosystem you're trying to get into. So this is just speaking to going into brick and mortar, right? And attracting a good broker, which is the point of those people, is that they're helping you understand the ecosystem. But the really good brokers don't often take risks on brand new companies because they don't want to waste their time because they make money only when the retailer orders, right? So one of the tricks can be, we made some we had bad broker experiences that cost us a lot of money because we went into a retailer without the right terms and we just lost our shirts. The product did really well, but you know what I mean? But there's slotting fees or the, hidden 10% co-op fee and you don't really know. And you at some point you're trusting other people because it's new to you. Not because you're naive, but because literally you cannot sit. A lot of these retailers will not meet with you without a broker if they know you're a new company because they know what you don't know, and they need someone who understands the vocabulary they can talk to.
So break it down. What are the things? What are the things that you don't want, and what are the things that you want?
So the things you want are I suggest finding someone who's in the business. So if you're selling into grocery. And work your network. Instead of trying to find investors, work your network to find somebody who's selling something or has ever sold something in a grocery store. And ask them, do they know brokers that they've worked with? Who do they know? Cold call companies that you admire online and see if you can find someone who give you advice or referral to a broker. The brokers, you would be amazed, can teach you a lot. As you mature, you move away from brokers and you start doing it all yourself. But in the beginning, one of our brokers is the one who we have multiple sizes based on retailer. So in mass, we have one size that's smaller, and in natural we have a different size, and it allows for differentiation between channels that keep all the retailers happy. Well, that suggestion in our very early days came from a broker which said, the way to go into this channels will be with a smaller size because then you won't have price, they won't be competing with each other. And be prepared, if you get on shelf with a retailer, you need to assume 30% minimum in your first year of whatever the forecasted revenue is. You need to spend that in what they call trade spend. And that's separate from brand. That's what you're spending in the retailer to drive awareness for the consumer. So that could be through a discount code that they offer to drive trial. That could be demos in store where you're showing people how your product works. So we built our business intentionally in Whole Foods. So we did not go into mass first because we knew we wanted to go into mass. We knew we had to build our reputation in natural because our goal was to build a product that we could sell the same product in Walmart, Whole Foods, Target, Amazon, and not change our ingredients and not have a cheaper version. And we wanted to prove that we could do that.
That's unique, isn't it?
It is. The goal was start in Whole Foods because that builds a reputation for the product from quality. And then you can go that. It's much harder to go the reverse direction, right? So we started in Whole Foods and we started in 50 doors. And that's the only other thing I would tell people. Retailers don't want you to fail, but they don't really care. Like they love having the new thing, but it's all up to you. It's like book deals now. It's not like the publisher's going to host a book tour for you. You have to go build it yourself. And they'll take you off shelf in a hot second. Right? The minute you're not doing what they think you need to be doing, you're gone. And by the way, you pay for them to take you off shelf. So you have to take that opportunity seriously. And I always encourage, take a few doors. Don't ask for 100. Don't ask for 1,000. We started in like 35 doors of Whole Foods. They came to us and said, we'd love to put you in 6 regions. We said, we'd like 1 region. We'd like 35 doors. We want to make sure the margins work. And the velocity that we know exists on Amazon, is that real? Is that just because it's online? Can we repeat it at the price at Whole Foods? Once we saw that happen, okay, good. Now we can go to the next channel. Then we did, mass. Then we did grocery. And we did it in a pretty methodical way because I had gotten that advice and because Gordon and I knew what we didn't know, which is we'd never made a thing. I'd never made anything sold in a grocery store before. So it's good to have that humility and just ask a million questions because people who will know. There will be someone in your network or some company that's willing to help you. And going to the big trade shows actually is a great way to do that. Going to Expo West, if you want to make a thing that's sold in a store, going to Expo West and walking around to the booths and asking people how they did it or who their broker was and look at the booths that you like or people who make stuff that you admire, it makes a huge difference.
That's just so true. So often we feel the need to show everybody what we know when in fact the key to success is being curious.
Yeah, because let me tell you something, you go in, you will get whacked on the head pretty fast, like you will find out the hard way, as we have many times.
So how do you get investors? How do you finance this if you're, you haven't had the experience in this particular sector? How did that come about?
So, and it was painful because we did go talk to a lot of our friends and VCs that we knew in the tech world. And they were like, oh, that sounds so cool. No way. Oh, and by the way, you're doing it with your significant other. No way ever. Right. tech. That's like the death knell.
Oh,
So we did it a couple ways. One, again, just like everybody, you just call a lot of people and ask them if they know anyone. And we did get very fortunate. One of our co-founders, our coach, this guy, Breck Costin, introduced us to someone that he kind of knew something about our field and was interested in an investor. And we got very fortunate because they ended up being incredible. It's a family office, and they ended up being investors really at every stage of the business and know something about this. And so we were very fortunate that way. But we still had to go out, and we use Circle Up, which is the crowdfunding platform for consumer packaged goods, which we loved because, again, it introduced us to all these investors that we didn't know before in this field that are kind of pre-selected and already have an interest in that. And even the due diligence process is so fascinating because the questions they ask, are teaching you all the time about the business that you're in. So we found that to be very, very helpful. But listen, it's a Scrabble. And we did get lucky in finding our original seed investor, but then we were also very cautious about the amount we raised. So just the way we went into retail is the way we went into investing. And I'm not saying it's actually not a great thing to go out and raise a bunch of money right out of the gate because you can grow quickly. But we were cautious. And we also knew in consumer packaged goods, you can lose your ownership very quickly because it's so capital intensive over time to scale.
It's not just health that's now becoming more popular with investors, but consumer packaged goods are definitely, that's totally new.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
It's like the world of things has reasserted itself.
It's pretty exciting. What are the pitfalls?
Well, again, it's a couple things. One, you can't pivot the way you can in tech. You can pivot, but it's a lot harder. And you've got money, cash tied up. That's the biggest thing in consumer packaged goods that everyone said to me, which is absolutely true, is it is cash. I mean, it is a cash monster because if you're growing quickly, you are trying to fund inventory purchases for growth. If you're growing at 100 to 200% year over year with revenue trailing that doesn't match that. So no matter how successful you are, it's very difficult to cover future purchases with current cash. And so that's really one of I think the hardest things about making a thing is that it's hard to change, right? And when stuff is out on shelf, it's out on shelf. If you find a mistake, it's out there. Right? If you don't like the way something looks, it's too late because it's there.
Can't just push a software update.
There's no really, and so it takes a lot more, I think, meticulousness in the product development phase and the research development phase and the launch phase to look at everything. We have 15 different people who are on a label reading process to make sure that you've caught everything.
It's interesting how we have a different mindset these days because we're so used to working with the web, even if you're not in tech, but just in the world where, Snapchat, it's going to be gone in 24 hours and a website, I can just make an update. And it's so different from the print industry and from packaged goods.
Right.
It's a whole different mentality. And I think we sometimes get lazy.
Totally. That's another thing. When you're thinking about the relationships, your vendor relationships, people who make the stuff with you and for you, once you've got something that's successful, you got to make sure you've created a relationship there where you've got leverage, your risk is managed, you have alternatives. Because if something gets switched off and all of a sudden you don't have this thing and you've built up all this demand, that's really almost the worst thing that can happen is to sell out once you've done all the work to create demand or if something changes about the product.
Where do you manufacture? Do you
in
use
California.
And do you have your own factory? Do you do contract manufacturing?
We do contract manufacturing. Again, when we started, it was like, here's what we know how to do. And here's what we want to care about and focus on. Here's what we don't know how to do, which is like build a mogul, which costs $20 million and put the mix into the thing. So we focused on the ingredients that we use, the forms of those ingredients, sourcing those ingredients, the product development in terms of what products do we want to make, the branding, the marketing, the sales. So, and quality control. So that's really what we focus on. And we have partners that actually physically make the product here in California.
Mogul.
Yeah. That's the thing, the Willy Wonka. Literally in Willy Wonka, when it comes out of the thing, that's what it looks like. It's called a mogul, and it's this huge, massive piece of equipment that these very tiny little gummies come out of at the end.
I want to go see.
No joke. It's pretty awesome. Next time I'm going, I'll invite you to come with me.
I would love to.
You can wear a hairnet. It's awesome.
Yes, I've done that many times in this tour.
In your business,
it's
have you been wearing?
embarrassing. So how do you protect the IP in this? Because I know at least in food, you cannot protect the recipe. So how about in your
Same
case?
thing. It's very challenging. Now, you can patent an ingredient, but we're not in that business, right? We're not making original ingredients. We approach it a couple different ways. And you can, one is just in the format that we know how hard it is to make an all-in-one. Makes it much more challenging for the product to be stable. Makes it a lot more challenging for it to come out consistently every single time the same way. So we try to create competitive protection, kind of 10%, but in 8 different ways. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of the incrementalism. And so that's by combining ingredients in a way that we know is going to allow us to make something that's premium but still doesn't cost that much more than the regular product, right? We focus on transparency and talking to people in a way that those other companies don't. So it creates a trust that we know that we have with people. We create competitive protection around relationships. So we have relationships with vendors that make these things that are exclusives. And I will tell you, this came up recently because everyone wants us to private label our product, which we will not do because we're a premium brand. And so that's not something that we're interested in. And we've had several customers go to our CMO and ask them to private label our product. And the CMO, thankfully, because we have, a partnership, has said, no, I will not. And we know because of who our CMO is, that locks them out of 50% of they make the highest quality stuff, we think, or one of the highest quality. That restricts their supply opportunity significantly.
So how do you find CMOs that you trust?
A lot of research. I mean, really, listen, when we started SmartyPants, there really weren't that many options. If you wanted one that was GMP, good manufacturing practice certified, that had a long history of very high quality. So we just went out and talked to those two. And
So you're releasing a bunch of new products right now. And spill the beans. What's the first one?
Well, the first one, which is very near and dear to my heart and may not be as glamorous, but I think is a hugely important product because it's serving a very, very real need. And it is our bariatric complete. And that is for anyone who's had weight loss surgery. And so we came about this product because I read all of our customer service emails still. I think it's a bellwether for what's happening and what people are looking for. And I had several people who've had bariatric surgery write into the customer service line and say, hey, look, I like your products, but I've had this surgery, which means I'm required to take a multivitamin for the rest of my life. Sometimes a double dose multivitamin because it's very hard to get enough food to get the nutrients I need. Here are the things that are missing. I wish you had this. I thought, okay, that's interesting. And, you get 1 email, 2 emails, you watch. As soon as you start to get quite a few, you really start to pay attention. So I got a few of those. And then over the summer, ran into someone who's one of the leading surgeons in the country that does this at a health conference. And he said, I really like your products. Your fiber product is really great, but a lot of my patients can't take it because fiber can be a really issue with in intestinal distress and, if you've had the surgery. And he said, I really wish you would make something for my patients. And I was like, oh, now this is starting to get compelling. And 3 months after that, a woman named Ashley Koff, who's a leading dietitian in the country, works with Michelle Obama. She's amazing. And she's on our advisory board. And she came to me out of the blue 2 months later and said, Courtney, I've really been wanting to make something for my patients that I see that are bariatric patients. And I got goosebumps.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, this is the third. This is it. We're doing
Writing
it.
on the
and
wall.
So we went and talked to people. We talked to people at Cedars-Sinai. We went and talked to all these different surgical groups and to dietitians and who work with these patients because really it is such a challenging life. It is once you've had the surgery, you are dealing with so many hurdles, and it's a community that absolutely needs a solution. And there was one or two products out there, but from our standpoint, they were not ones that people would take consistently because it was a very unpleasant experience. I am so excited to launch the product, which is an AM and a PM complete. We're excited because every doctor in the country will tell you do not take a gummy vitamin. Any doctor for bariatric surgery because they knew. And so where we're headed is don't take a gummy vitamin unless it's the SmartyPants bariatric.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How big is the market?
It is pretty significant. There are about 300,000 people and growing that have the surgery every year, and there's several different kinds of surgeries. And so the needs vary based on the surgery. But what they've seen is this surgery is the most effective tactic in reducing all-cause mortality for people that are obese. I mean, it's so successful that they're starting to, and there was a huge paper that came out about 9 months ago that said, look, clinically, this is a no-brainer. That they are starting to recommend it younger and younger. And is it a shame that, that's a growing problem in the country? Absolutely. But it's great that there's an intervention that they are seeing very dramatic results that can be life-saving. And so being a tool in that, to me, is like, it does not get better than that. That's why you do this, right? I mean, that's amazing. You have a community that absolutely needs the product, and you can make something that matches that need. You know, that's just, I don't know, that's magic to me.
You have so many products already. How do you innovate? What's that innovation process for you? I mean, clearly with this bariatric solution, the writing was on the wall.
Right. And that happens a lot. I mean, listen, we really haven't, the one of the things I was saying about SmartyPants that I kind of love is it's its own thing now. It used to be Gordon and I, but now it's its own thing, and it's really pulled us to get bigger versus us forcing it to get bigger. And that comes from inbound, just watching what it is people, and looking at the market and seeing where the gaps are. You know, listen, we have 9 SKUs. Most of our competitors have 25 to 300. So we actually don't have very many compared to them. So what we're focusing on now is, one, making sure every demographic we've created a custom solution for, whether that's 50 plus or if prenatals now, or we have, so it's really looking at all those segments, making sure they've been addressed. And then anywhere else a comprehensive solution is needed. That's why we launched the probiotics, because ours isn't just a probiotic, it's a prebiotic and probiotic. And the whole way probiotics work is the bugs need something to eat, and that's prebiotic fiber. And most of those solutions were not being sold comprehensively. So the innovation is really a combination of, what are the retailers saying they don't have that they really want? What market segment have we not addressed yet with this comprehensive solution that we know really makes sure people are taking them consistently?
Sounds like it's a conversation both with the customer and the retailers, and looking, because
it's a lot of places. It's a lot of inputs.
Just talking to customers, you may get the wrong
That's
input.
Right. Yeah. You kind of, it's everyone. And listen, it's our scientific community. It's where are the deficiencies that are emerging that we need to be focused on? Where are the chronic issues? Because that's really the whole point. The world does not need another vitamin company making a Me Too product. There are, it doesn't. So the goal is, we're not going to make something if someone's already doing it well. It's only if someone's not doing it well, or doing it well, but only for the 5%, and someone needs to do it for the 95%. That's kind of where we see ourselves as a good option. And so a lot of it, frankly, is my gut. And Gordon is a futurist, and that has served us very well too, because he sees things way before they happen. He's always been that way, because he'll start talking about something, and 2 years later, it shows up. So product is really what we are a product-led company, so it should be this way. That is really my baby. That is what I spend most of my time on, really, is product. Thinking about product, how can we make our current products better, and what else, do we want to make that we think would be a contribution.
How many people are on your team?
So we now have, I think, we just hired 2 people. I think we're 47.
Wow. So
now.
Do you know everyone's name?
I do.
Okay, good.
And I talk to everybody, and it's this is the fun part. I've had a business where I had 600 employees. I've had, this to me is the fun part, when you've got, it's just not that many people, frankly, for given what we're doing and how fast we're growing. I feel very, very, very fortunate to have people who are so lit up by the mission, who really like each other a lot, who are super, super driven, but also, laugh a lot and have a good time. And yeah, they're amazing.
What kind of a manager are you?
Demanding. I heard it was very funny. We were interviewed for this thing that we were nominated for, and they said it was great because they asked Gordon to describe me and me to describe Gordon, which I thought was actually really interesting. And I think he nailed it, which is, he said, Courtney is very demanding, but in the service of the mission, not of her ego. And I think that's true. I do take the obligation very seriously. And look, life is short. We don't get the time back. If I'm going to do it, let's at least make it matter. And if everything goes sideways, if the whole thing blew up tomorrow, I want at least to know that there were 45 people or 50 people or 6, or however many ends up being, who are better off for having worked there, because no one can take that away. And that the matching grants that we made to those, it's now almost 4 million matching grants that we've made through Vitamin Angels. That's real. No one can take that away.
Tell us more about that.
Well, when we started the business, and this is credit to Blake, who started Tom's Shoes. I knew him, and I think he made it acceptable for people to have that as part of their balance sheet before you ever, are profitable. The mission was more health, more people every day. And the idea is that should apply universally. And we simply have to use different tactics for different audiences. And so we do that through this matching grant with Vitamin Angels, which is an amazing organization. They're really the leader in this micronutrient field. And what's amazing is it's 20 cents to give a child vitamin A for a year. Wow. And you don't need a doctor. It can go in one serving in a pill, and it drives your immunity and the susceptibility to diseases. And we don't headline what we do with Vitamin Angels, but it's a very important part of it to our team. And every single person I've ever interviewed, literally every single person, pretty sure that I've ever interviewed has said, one of the reasons I want to work here is because what you guys do with Vitamin Angels, which I love, obviously. But anyway, so I'm demanding, but I do it in service of the fact that you don't get this time back. But I think everyone does know that I do it for them and that we care deeply about our employees, and we reflect that in our actions, and not just our compensation, but really how we treat people and where we do focus our investment internally in terms of them. And we created this personal development fund, and everyone is given a budget every year to do something that gets them out of their comfort zone, to help them develop into better people. We all talk internally about what we struggle with personally and how we can work on it that year to overcome it, and how our peers can help us overcome it. So, I think it's special, and it just makes it worth the while, frankly.
Tell us about your 16-year-old self.
Oh my gosh. My 16-year-old self. She
she
rode horses pretty much all the time. That's pretty much all she did. I was definitely a late bloomer.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Texas, in Dallas, Texas. My family all fortunately moved to Austin, which is great. But I went to, school in Dallas and loved it and had great friends and all that. But I was an introvert trapped in what felt to me like a world where being an extrovert was the right thing to be. And I dealt with that through sports, frankly. If I had not, I think horses really saved my life. I rode horses. I was a competitive equestrian, and I did that in a very devoted way because it was a place I could be where I didn't have to be anything other than me. And it took me a long time to grow into that and be comfortable. But I spent a lot of time compensating and being very extroverted in a way that I felt like I had to be for some reason. And so my 16-year-old self, I think, was frankly confused, scared, unsure. But when I was with my horse, everything was awesome.
And what do you think she would think about what you're doing now?
I think she'd be really happy. I think she would think that it's great that I put down whatever it was I was carrying around that made me think I had to be something else. You know what I mean? I've always been so intense. I mean, you can tell by talking to me. I'm a very intense person and very passionate. And I think for a long time I thought that was a bad thing.
We've had many crazier people.
Wow, I'm so glad that I passed. But I think it's true that when you internalize things, you don't even realize you're doing it. And when you're 15 or 16, you've already internalized so many stories about the way you're supposed to be. And not to the fault of my parents, who were amazing and supportive and loved me, but I just felt like an alien. I did.
I think we all felt a little bit like that.
No, I think that's true. Absolutely. I don't think that makes me special. I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
But I just didn't, for some reason, I wasn't brave enough to say to someone else, I feel this way, and have them say, oh, me too. And then go, oh, okay, we're both aliens.
So when did you finally figure out that you were not alone?
I think when I was 35.
Really?
Listen, I've had amazing friends my whole life. I just don't think they really knew that. I don't think I was ever honest with them about how uncomfortable I felt. In work, I've always felt very comfortable. I am so comfortable building stuff. It's my place. I'm totally at home. I'm very confident. I'm happy. But in social situations, I had anxiety that I didn't really realize was there, that I totally internalized. And, some of that stuff can make you very productive. I was a very, very good, I was the top salesperson at CNET. I was I was an achiever. But a lot of that wasn't coming from an authentic place. It was coming from a compensatory place. And the shift in that is what I think then put me on the path that has now made me so happy and successful and loving my life and my career and all those things. Is I just was able to put it down. And it was just maturity. It was just time.
It wasn't, it seemed that you had one of those real pivotal moments, though, really early on when you decided not to go to HBS.
Yeah, there was a part of me that was taking care of me, clearly, right? There's that part of me that knew I had this enormous drive, and I felt justice. I had a very deep sense of justice. I was a protester I was on the cover of the Charlotte Observer when I went to Davidson College because I started PFLAG.
Say what it is.
So PFLAG is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, which, trust me, that's so namby-pamby. Forget, that was no one would even dream of starting a group actually for lesbians and gays, right? It was just for parents and friends of lesbians and gays. And that, as it was so controversial.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it is now.
No, this is the point.
Yeah.
So it was always in me, I had this deep sense of justice. I was always fighting for the underdog.
And what did your parents think when you said you're not going to HBS?
They were not happy about it. Are you kidding me? They're like, not only that, but what are you doing? Oh, I'm going, there's this thing called the internet, and it's the web.
And what year was that?
And this is 94, 95. They're like, are you insane? I don't know what you're doing. Oh, and I live in New York City. I had started out working at the governor's office. They're like, oh, she's such promise, Now she's weird, like living in New York City, working and sleeping in a bunk bed at her office. Like, what's happened? But it all worked out. And to their credit, they said, you're on your own. Like, you get out of college, we have paid for you to go to college. You are financially, you got to support yourself. And I'm so grateful for that, because I developed the internal fortitude, that financial gain, I was liberated from that because I knew I'd be okay. I found ways to go to the Chinese place downtown in Manhattan, and I could get a box of rice for $1 and a box of broccoli, and I could make that last for 2 dinner. You know what I mean? I did all those things.
I did the ramen noodles and then put the egg in just every once in a while. For
Yeah,
the protein.
exactly. For some protein. The best one I ever did was my kids love these stories, but I went, you used to be able to sign up for those clubs where you get all this, you get the music. Right. I signed up for those clubs. For a penny, you'd get 50 things. I signed up under 15 aliases and then sold them, got them all for 5 pennies, and then sold them to the place down the street for that got me $100. Needless to say, it then ruined my credit for the next 15 years because I never paid for any of them. Oh my God. I was definitely an entrepreneur. That part, no doubt, was in my bloodstream from,
Absolutely.
Little kid.
So there's 3 questions that I ask everyone, in addition to the 16-year-old self.
Okay.
So what's next? What's kind of the big pie in the sky, what you hope?
I hope we really do change how vitamins and supplements are made in the country, and that people come to expect and assume that the nutrients are going to be the best ones for them, that they will be affordable to everybody, and that I think we can have a hand in doing that.
And what keeps you up at night in pursuing that?
What keeps me up at night? Global shortages of things keep me up at night, really. Vitamin E, that happened 5 years ago when we were first starting. There was a global shortage of vitamin E, and we use this non-GMO E. So we have a smaller supply than maybe some other people. That keeps me up at night. I know enough about the business and what we're doing that it's built on a very solid foundation, right? I know what our repurchase rate is. I know people are very devoted to the brand. I know how good my team is and how amazing they are at what they do. The only thing that, really hurts us is literally something goes on and we're not able to make the product because something like that happens. And so the good news is, I say this to my team, we do this every couple of months. I have everyone make a list, have your keep you up at night list and have it on your computer, taped up on your computer, because if you have your top 5 things, they will not come to pass. Or if they come to pass, you will have created so much hedge around that risk. And I learned that actually from Steve Rill. It was a great bit of mentorship, to just keep in your forefront. Don't hide from those things, because then you'll keep them from happening, or you'll certainly mitigate the impact of that happening.
And if there's one thing you wish you had known, maybe some advice to other entrepreneurs, what would that be?
It's so hard to limit it to one thing. I would say no one's ever going to care as much as you care. Your sales, your brokers, the people that make the stuff, no one's ever going to care as much as you care. So you have to decide you have the appetite to care a lot and to pay attention to all the facets, because making something is complicated and things can go wrong in every part of that. And then while doing that, build a team that you trust that can manage each of those pieces for you.
Amazing. Yeah, great. Anything else I should have asked you?
No. That was amazing. I got really deep there for a second. I really went vulnerable. I hope that's okay.
I love it. I love it. How can people reach you, buy your product, find out more?
They can always reach me. I'm always interested and available. I can't always promise that I answer, but I always do make myself available. If someone wants to email me, Courtney@SmartyPantsCorp.com. And we are at Smarty Health on Instagram and everywhere else in social milieu. And you can find us really almost anywhere, online, Amazon, on our own website, all the major retailers online, as well as, Kroger, Safeway, Whole Foods, Target, Walmart, Costco. Any major retailer now carries our products.
It was such a rich conversation. So much great information and so much fun, too.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you
amazing.
very much for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to try one of these women's completes.
Yeah, good.
Wow, if I had to boil our conversation down to 3 most memorable themes, I think they would be: first, I love the democratization of premium concept. It's an opportunity to make a big impact. While other startups go for the high growth segments, which tend to be more niche, SmartyPants had the audacity to go for the mass market. What seems to drive the strategy, and what really struck me, was how they're committed to their mission of more health, more people, every day. Did you catch that they gave matching grants to Vitamin Angels? But they don't mention it in their marketing, which is so interesting to me because it feels so much more authentic that way when they don't use the mission as the value proposition to the consumer. But they benefit by attracting the best talent. Every employee mentioned the program in their interview. Also, I like the different ways they've been able to get leverage as a scrappy startup. For example, they welcome their competition copying their higher quality ingredients because their large ad budgets help educate the consumer. Also, they used Amazon as a platform to learn from customers, get credibility, and demonstrate traction before heading for the big leagues. And finally, today's retail environment is incredibly complex. Some estimates say 25% of U.S. retailers will be out of business by the year 2022, which is crazy. Omnichannel is converging. Amazon is putting incredible downward price pressure across categories. And new e-commerce models like direct-to-consumer or D2C are all the rage. But contrary to the trends, Courtney does not believe that D2C is the right path, at least for them, because she thinks the upside is too limited. So they took a different tack. They started on Amazon and then engaged customers and approached every channel very deliberately along the way, from high-end to mass market, and starting modestly in each channel. And once they were on the shelves, it didn't get any easier. Since Courtney's episode dropped last year, SmartyPants surpassed 7.1 million matching grants to Vitamin Angels. They've also launched many more products: toddler vitamins, an organic vegetarian version, and just a couple weeks ago, they launched Smarty Paws for Pets. Brilliant! I can see they're pushing to always innovate and maximize their virtual shelf space. Time to wrap it up for The Art of Manufacturing. Tune in next Thursday for another great episode. In the meantime, you made it this far, so you must like the podcast, right? Would you tell your friends about us? Help us grow so we can continue to bring you more insights and content. Thank you. For show notes, visit www.artofmfg.com. Follow our adventures on Instagram and Twitter @artofmfg. And to chat with other like-minded creators, join the Art of Manufacturing Facebook group. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or your favorite player. And if you like the show, do us a favor and leave us a review. Or send us a message with your thoughts and ideas to feedback@artofmfg.com. This podcast is produced by At Large and Dangerous in collaboration with Make It in LA and other partners. Visit makeitinla.org/connect to sign up for local LA events and news. A big shout out to Peter Brandenburg, the producer and audio engineer. Thanks for listening to The Art of Manufacturing. I'm Z Holly, and remember, don't just make it, make it.